But damage caused by Wednesday night fire incident at the Accra Central Police Barracks, Annex. Later on the program, Nkwantanang Madina Municipal Assembly pushes for the arrest and prosecution of the landlord of a building that collapsed which resulted in the death of one person at Adenta New Site. We'll also bring you the latest from the Ghana Medical Association expressing concerns over Health Ministry's summons of Chief Executive of Komfo Teaching Hospital. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Wednesday's downpour wreaked havoc across many parts of the Greater Accra region, leaving roads and bridges flooded, causing hours of gridlock and cutting off several communities. Old Ashongman, Aboba, Hachu, Dompila 2, Kaneshi, Lakeside Estate, and Nanakrum were among the areas hardest hit by the floods. At the Kaneshi market and part of Ashongman, residents and traders were seen trying to salvage goods and personal belongings swept away by the flood waters. In Nanakum, some residents reported being trapped in their homes as roads became impassable. The impact of the rains is still being felt today. Many commuters endured longer journeys to work, while others remain without electricity. Several residents and business owners are also beginning to assess the full extent of damage to their homes, shops and properties. Coincidentally, the floods occurred exactly 11 years after the June 3 flood and fire disaster, reigniting debate over whether enough has been done to address Accra's persistent flooding problem and prevent a similar tragedy. Engineer Mahama Abdullah joins us on the phone with some information on really assessing the perennial flooding in the city. Good afternoon to you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good afternoon, Beatrice. It's a pleasure having me.
It's been 11 years since the June 3 disaster. Why do many of the same communities continue to experience severe flooding whenever there is heavy rainfall? Even sometimes just a little rain causes these floodings.
Yes, I must say good afternoon to your cherished listeners. I must admit that yesterday's rain and creeping to this dawn was the heaviest just by my own imagination. It's not even with the records, but I've not felt the intensity of the rains like this before. It's been very heavy. And so we're having a lot of the surface receiving thousands of liters of water. And the fact that we may have difficulty in infiltration of the water into the soil, that would be a problem. You are somebody who has engaged me several times. And I'm not surprised that last year, April, when you raised an issue when I gave you information about the Abokubi enclave. It has come now hunting the larger communities which are supposed to have been having some relief if those reservoirs or the receptors were actually dealt with. And so we should be expecting more torrential rainfall with accompanying devastations much bigger than what we are anticipating experiencing now, sadly. I think on Saturday I made a quote that the indiscipline is creeping up, and fortunately the president more or less repeated the same statement I made on Saturday. On Monday, and I've seen Ghana East Assembly making some effort to identify the wetlands and get a lot of those question mark buildings out of the place. I'm sure that if you can play back your videos, check the areas that I stated last year.
As in when you were on Agenda?
Agenda, thank you very much. That those pictures that we give to your producer to make the presentation. We still have the East Assembly to go to that one. I think they are identifying the wetlands, and there are about 4 or 5 areas within that section.
Do I get it? Go ahead, please, Land.
The Works and Housing Ministry were captured in a report by the Auditor General's Department, Ministry and Secretariat. 2015 to 2019, the 18 receptors are still not been done. At least we've not been given any update to the contrary. the Auditor General's report that was published in 2021 that encapsulated works not absent from 2015 to 2019. These receptors, when the reservoirs are really identified and buildings sitting on them are demolished, and not just demolished, they are reinstated to its original state. Let's say 18 retention ponds can contain, let's say, 100 million liters of water. What it means is that if we are expecting 120 million liters of water, the 20 million liters can be accommodated, or let's say be tolerated. We will not have the rise in the flood waters inundating the communities.
Do you have any information as regards what is being done about these receptors you talk about?
Not yet. I have checked the other subsequent reports, and it's still blank. That's why this weekend, last week, Thursday on other stations, and Saturday on Big Issue, I still sustain that the parliamentarians were with me on set. This is a question that they have to ask when they go to Parliament to ask. They are the House of Records to get information from the Works and Housing Ministry and the Garrett project. And I made one statement again that, let's say the Garrett project is trying to expand the storm area, the storm drains, to be able to contain quite a significant quantity of water. Ironically, the 18 retention ponds and other wetlands are taking over. So let's give this question, or have an answer, a several question. As you know, this Garrett project is supposed to expand and contain, let's say, 100 million liters of water. And then it has been augmented by the natural reserves, which is, let's say, 80 million liters. That would have been 180 million liters. Now, if we have allowed the 80 million liters receptors to be filled, and buildings spring on them, that means you are putting more pressure, even though you are trying to expand the Garrett drains, which are identified within Kandishi, Ofanko, Asofan, and many other areas that are identified.
I need to ask you two quick questions because of time.
Right.
I want to find out from you, areas such as Nanakromo, Dashoma, Hacho, and Kaneshi were badly affected. And anytime it rains, really, we get to hear reports from these areas. Are there any immediate interventions that could be implemented by authorities to at least mitigate the impact?
Well, I've seen Gan East, at least I can say that on record. I saw them yesterday, the day before yesterday, that all this sustained advocacy that you and I and other people have been talking about, they are tracing these flood lines, and they have identified some houses. And as of this morning, 2 houses and other houses were being demolished in the waterway, and they're trying to expand the reservoirs. When they do that, it means that we'll have less water flashing on the roads or our communities. Nana Krum, for instance, hitherto was not flooding. Lakeside is receiving a very fair share of its flood-related issues. Adenta is one. So I think they should sustain the demolition on the wetlands, and I plead that Ghanaians should not make any political gimmick with what the assemblies will do. But in the same time, the assemblies also should not sit to allow the buildings to get to its conclusion stages or finishing stages before they come and do the reactive measure. We have to be proactive, identify all the wetlands. I get one website. I just said that let's try and use our WhatsApp, what we call the current locations. Any other person who's listening to you this afternoon, get the area and just locate the WhatsApp location on your WhatsApp and share it with me, Beatrice Adu, and then we can take it from there and identify how those places used to be 10, 15 years ago, and then we'll give to Assembly to take action on this.
All right, very briefly, and again, a part of what I heard you say was also in discipline, growing in discipline, contributing to the current situation. Is that right?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. And you had the engineer Abdullahi Mahama giving us his assessment of the perennial flooding in Accra. Meanwhile, the Nkwantanang Madina Municipal Assembly says it will pursue the arrest and prosecution of the landlord of the collapsed building for allegedly defying directives and building regulations issued by the assembly. The 2-story structure comprising ground and first floor apartments collapsed on Wednesday, trapping 5 occupants beneath the rubble. The victims, made up of 3 adults and 2 children, were rescued during a prolonged operation by emergency response teams. The last victim, Margaret Kweli, was pulled from the debris unconscious and subsequently handed over to the Adenta District Police for preservation and investigations. Assembly officials say the building had been earmarked for enforcement action over regulatory concerns, raising questions about compliance with planning and construction requirements. While the exact cause of the collapse remains unknown, authorities say investigations will commence following the completion of rescue operations. The Municipal Chief Executive for Nkwantanang Madina Ibrahim Faila Fuseni says the Assembly will take legal action against the landlord.
So they stopped him and he refused to listen to that. So some way, somehow, he found his own means to move to the 2-story. So that is what we are in now. And we are going to arrest him. We will not spare that. The law must bite. And therefore, we will take him. So we are now looking for him.
Moving forward, are you going to demolish buildings of this sort?
Oh, yes. There are plenty of this that we've already started. In fact, as of last 2 weeks, Mr. Free, I think we demolished about 4. Last 2 weeks, we demolished about 4. Little did we know that something like this is going to happen. But you see, like people say, sometimes when you are planning, you should remember that the bigger planner is Almighty. So he's giving us this as a test case to see that there are more of this nature, not only in Madina or Nkwantanang Madina Municipal Assembly, but across the nation. We should ensure that the right thing is being adhered to, and that is what we are going to champion for henceforth.
So this very incident would have been avoidable.
Certainly, my brother, this situation could have been avoidable if the building owner or the owner of the building would have listened to the former engineer. He would have stopped this construction. By refusing to understand, thinking that it is my property, I have the right to build, although, and I'm sending this caution to all developers, although it is your property, it is your land, it is your money, but remember, when such calamities happen, it is not you, it is the Abai or the government that will be pulled upon, just like what is happening today. The regional minister, the sector minister himself, was outside, but he moved because of this particular issue. So why should we wait for such things to happen? So automatically we are going to embark on such projects and make sure that we bring all to its finality.
And you heard that the Municipal Chief Executive for Nkwantanang Madina, Ibrahim Faila Fuseni. He was speaking to my colleague George Quenin, who's been on site since morning. He joins us live on the phone. George, if you can hear me, with the rescue mission over, what are the authorities doing next as far as the building collapse is concerned?
Thank you so much. And so, like you mentioned, we've been here since morning, and the fire service are done with their rescue mission. They started. They had the distress call around 18:30 hours, and then they finished with the rescue mission 22:30 hours. And so now that they are done, the debris must be cleared for the engineers to come and check the structural integrity of the building. But prior to that, experts have actually mentioned that it had issues. The beams are weak, the concrete is not enough, and even the landlord was directed not to pursue that very building, according to his old contractor, but he defied those orders and built. And I heard the MC saying that he will be charged, he will be arrested and charged. So I'm sure hopefully by today that will be done. But I'm still with the MC, turns the area, and I think where it happened is landlocked area, and you can see people building on waterways. And it's crazy. It's a serious thing here. So it's like people are not really adhering to standards, and they are doing their own thing. At the end of the day, when things get out of hand, they come in asking for government for support. So the minister says, the MP says, moving forward, if you want to build any building, you have to make sure your permit is intact. You don't do things against the law. So we are still with him, trying to sort some of the affected areas in the area.
And George, this morning we interacted with you on Midday on TV3, and you tried to interact with some of the residents there who were obviously in shock. How is their demeanor like a few hours after this incident?
It's actually like you said, they were actually in shock. You see 3-4 women standing with their arms folded, and they have a lot to say, but most of them didn't want to talk to us because they would cry. But I actually spoke to two heroes who actually helped in the evacuation of these people. But before the fire service came, they tried their best, even though the building could have actually, collapsed further. They actually, still went stronger and then took some of them out. So for them, it was a shock. They didn't even know them in person, but it felt like doing an act of, goodness was very necessary. So for them, that's what it is.
All right, thank you very much, George Queenie. Bring us updates on the building collapse in Madina. Let's cross over now to my colleague Joseph Armstrong, who is currently interacting with Interior Minister Mohammed Muntaka Mubarak.
The accommodation, but with regards to what has gotten bent, I mean, His Excellency is out of town. When he comes, we are immediately going to look at what we can immediately do to replace that, because already the deficit is very high, and we need to be able to close the gap. So that's what we'll be doing.
So before you talk about the attack on the fire personnel, people have also raised concern about the businesses back home, about some of these spouses of the police personnel, the number of freezers we saw at the place that got burnt. Isn't it worrying?
Well, it is. That's why we are working with fire service, even the National Fire Service, even those structures that have not been burned. They will go and do the assessment, and let's see the fire safety measures that can be put to enhance and prevent further, some of these things from happening. The investigation is on. We don't want to preempt what the investigation will show, but obviously I want to believe that the police, the Ghana National Fire Service, and the security agencies are putting their heads together to make sure that this thing do not repeat itself, and anything that we need to do to support that, we'll do. With regards to the Ghana National Fire Service and personnel going out and being attacked, they've been working with police, but what we realized was that when they go to the scene, they have this breathing apparatus. The police don't have. So after the police stand there for some time, obviously the smoke and the inhalation, they have to step back. So on our own, with the Ghana National Fire Service, we started training what we call the fire police. So they've just graduated the first, 50. It is to help them. So when they are going to the fire scene, they will go with these fire police who are well trained to be able to protect the officers on the ground, whilst the police back them up when it becomes necessary.
You want to caution the general public for daring?
Yeah, obviously, because sometimes, you see, when you do that, you are being unfair to them. Whether the police, the fire service, the prisons, all of them, we are supposed to provide them the apparatus to be able to work, the accoutrement. And then the fire service, as I always say, the newest fire tender we have is 14 years old. So when they are coming in big and they get there and you're attacking them, how fair are you to them? It's we, the state, who must provide them with those equipment. And now
you are not arresting. You are not arresting.
No, we are. But currently, I can tell you, those who did the attack in Kaswa and Adenta are before the court, and we are prosecuting them. And that will continue. So, but the president is on the mood for us to be able to buy new fire tender. We started the process. We've gotten the commencement. The process is on. I'm sure by the end of the year, some new fire tenders will come. That may help speed up some of the, and then prevent this unnecessary attack because they have delayed. I mean, if you are using a very rickety vehicle, obviously it cannot get to the place in good time. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And you had the Interior Minister Mohammed Muntaka Mubarak interacting with my colleague Joseph Armstrong. Well, it's in relation to him, together with some other security officials I saw in the IGP, Christian Tetoyono, as well as senior fire officials, assessing and inspecting, indeed, the Accra Regional Police Barracks Annex that was gutted by fire last evening. Now, the minister was joined, as I did just say, the Inspector General of Police. He was joined by him, the Chief Fire Officer, and other senior officials to assess the extent of damage caused by the blaze and interact with the affected residents. Let me remind you that the fire destroyed parts of the residential facility, leaving several families displaced and prompting concerns over safety and accommodation for affected officers and their families. And earlier you heard the minister also touch on the issue of fire officers being attacked by residents of various communities when they go on duty to douse flames. And he's saying that the latest one that we saw within the Kaswa area, the culprits have been, they are currently facing the court for their involvement in that assault on fire officials. We'll bring you more later. The Chief Executive Officer of the Komfo Teaching Hospital is expected to appear before the Minister for Health today to explain circumstances surrounding the temporary closure of the hospital's Accident and Emergency Center. Hospital management says the decision was necessitated by severe congestion at the facility, which had reached its capacity and could no longer safely admit additional emergency cases. The development has sparked concerns about widespread public debate, really, with concerns over access to emergency health care in one of the country's biggest referral hospitals. The Ghana Medical Association has also weighed in on the matter, expressing concern over the query issued by the Ministry of Health to the CEO. Noble Korsbianan is my colleague. He has a copy of that statement. He joins us in the studio. Noble, if you can take us through what the GMA is saying in a statement.
Right, Beatrice, this is a lengthy one explaining to us the context of everything that has happened. It is, like you mentioned, signed by Professor Dr. Med Ernest York, President and the General Secretary of the Ghana Medical Association. And it says that the association has taken note of the public discussions that has come from recent statement issued by management of the Komfo Teaching Hospital regarding congestion at the Accident and Emergency Care Center and the temporary measures instituted to manage the situation. And the GMA has made some developments, has been following the developments keenly since the issue became public. So following engagement with management of the hospital, discussions with some staff of the Accidents and Emergency Center, and review of the explanations provided by the medical director of the hospital in media interviews, according to the GMA, it does not appear that the hospital turned away emergency patients. Rather, the statement says that the temporary measures announced by management were intended to support the appropriate redistribution of patients to some peripheral health facilities within the region, while the hospital addressed significant congestion and capacity constraints at its Accident and Emergency Center. The statement adds that a review of the minutes and the meetings held on June 2 this year by the Regional Health Directorate suggests that there were deliberate and agreed actions outlined to mitigate congestion situation at the Komfo Teaching Hospital. And the GMA is noting that the circumstances described by management reflected a situation in which patient numbers had exceeded the design capacity of the facility, and that necessitated urgent operational interventions to ensure that patient safety and maintain quality of care for critically ill patients already receiving treatment in the facility. The association further notes with satisfaction that the situation has since improved remarkably at the Accident and Emergency Center. And the GMA emphasizes that while the immediate challenge at CAF may have been resolved, the incident is highlighting a broader systemic issue that is confronting emergency care delivery in the country. They are also making a few demands calling for sustained investments in emergency medicine infrastructure. Number 2 is expansion of emergency care facilities. 3, strengthening of referral systems and improving resourcing of regional and district hospitals to enhance their capacity to manage emergency cases closer to patient communities. Now, the last 4 paragraphs say that every Ghanaian, regardless of where they live, should have timely access to quality emergency care. Strengthening emergency care capacity at all levels of the health system will not only reduce pressure on major referral hospitals, but will also improve patient outcomes nationwide. And GMA is also acknowledging the efforts of the doctors, nurses, and medicine specialists and the healthcare professionals at CAF and across the Ashanti region who worked under challenging circumstances to ensure continuity of care to safeguard patient welfare. The GMA is, however, concerned about the negative picture portrayed by the query letter to the Chief Executive Officer of the Komfo Teaching Hospital, which appears to suggest wrongdoing by the management of CAF. And the association hopes that the outcome of the engagement between the Chief Executive Officer of CAF and the Minister for Health will contribute to strengthening emergency healthcare delivery and addressing the challenges highlighted by this incident rather than adverse outcomes. GMA will be monitoring and will inform further actions. They remain committed to supporting policies and interventions that improve healthcare delivery and patient safety for all Ghanaians.
Thank you very much, Noble Cosbianan, bringing us details of that statement issued by the Ghana Medical Association, or the GMA. I'm joined via video call now by the General Secretary of the GMA, Dr. Richard Salome. Good afternoon to you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. Hello? Dr. Salome, can you hear us? All right. We'll have to connect again to him to bring you more as regards the perspective of the GMA on this query, as it were, issued to the CEO of the Komfo Teaching Hospital by the Ministry of Health. Ahead of that, the Accra High Court has ordered that MPP Bono Regional Chairman Kwame Bafo, aka Abronye, be remanded into police custody after he failed to meet his bail condition of depositing his travel document. Lawyers of Abronye on Thursday prayed for his bail conditions that required him to deposit his passport to be varied, citing the need for their client to travel to the UK for educational purposes. Abronye is facing charges of offensive conduct conducive to the breach of peace and publication of false news over alleged derogatory remarks against the Circuit Court judge. The MPP Bono chairman did not show up in court when the case was called. Now, families of victims of Tuesday's fatal road crash at Peki in the Volta region are thronging the Peki Government Hospital to identify their loved ones. The crash, which claimed 15 lives, has left families devastated as they await confirmation of the identities of the deceased. Several hours after the tragedy, the news team has been following developments at the hospital where survivors are receiving treatment and grieving relatives continue to arrive. Correspondent Faisal Abdul Idrisu has the rest of the story.
The Peki Government Hospital is currently holding 20 out of the 25 survivors from yesterday's road accident. According to the hospital authorities, 5 of the victims have been referred to the whole teaching hospital for further treatment. 27-year-old Al-Hassan Raouf is a driver of one of the vehicles involved in the crash.
Kare na boy ansana kana omom kana sa tofom ansana sa twifon sa aboboy mini me meet na ye tre o kanum na me hanum e try na mensa
Your car fell on there, so how?
No, my car they on road top, fall, do anything. Just say the my car can't hit my car. I'm gonna be hitting me there. Me quite all right. Me knew I'm quite into a track careful no fano. Potos so anymore. Potos no over doja what trust and see.
This is the exact spot the two vehicles collided yesterday. Raouf, the driver of the Mercedes-Benz container, told me earlier that the passenger vehicle was avoiding a pothole just in front of us here and veered into his lane, and then that is what resulted into the accident that killed 15 people on the spot. As you can see, these are the words, including the mango. Raouf said he was conveying all the way from Nkwantanang to Accra before the incident happened. Even though it's been more than 24 hours since the incident happened, we can still see some blood stains and also items belonging to the victims of yesterday's incident. But interestingly,
and that report was brought in by Faisal Abdul Idrisu. He is our Volta regional correspondent. That's it for the Midday News here on 3FM and 92.7. Log on to 3news.com for more news. My name is Beatrice Adu. Have a good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the business news segment on 3FM 92.7. I'm Noble Crosby. And coming up, Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana warns of production halt over rice glut and import delays. Also, Africa Policy Lens warns fuel price pressures eating into household incomes, threatening to drive Ghana's inflation higher after rising to 3.7% in May amid Iran conflict. Meanwhile, Finance Minister is confident Ghana's inflation will stay below 5% despite Middle East tensions. We have details of these stories and more coming to you right after this. Stay with us. Let's start from here. Now, the Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana has issued an urgent warning to the government stating that thousands of farmers will completely abandon rice production for the upcoming farming season unless immediate action is taken to resolve a severe market glut. According to an independent assessment by the group, over 90% of local rice farmers are currently holding massive amounts of unsold stock. The association blames the crisis on a market continuously flooded by foreign imports and rampant border smuggling, alongside the failure of the National Food Buffer Stock Company to purchase local produce as mandated. While welcoming government proposal for a rice import quota system, the group stresses that delayed implementation is destroying the economic incentive for local farming. Let's listen to the Executive Director of the Peasant Farmers Association, Bismarck Owusu Note, speaking.
Announcing a policy, but it's about actually beginning its implementation as immediately as possible so that we are able to salvage the current losses that our farmers are facing, and that will put them in a proper opportunity for them to begin the next planting season. Things have been very, very tough for our farmers within the last year regarding the glut. Our farmers have unsold rice and maize and other staples with prices that have crashed, and it's quite a disheartening experience. For this particular planting season, a lot of farmers are refusing to actually plant because they are unsure what will happen to their produce, especially if you have the same scenario. So the call is that once government has the intention of doing that, we want them to do it as quickly as possible. This is in addition to the other measures that we want government to do. For instance, placing the moratorium on the rice imports whilst we work around this policy, finding money to ensure that we're able to offtake whatever the farmers have to clear their stock so that they're able to go into the new planting season, and then putting in place a very holistic plan to ensure that we do not face this particular scenario again.
Executive Director of PFAG, Bismarck Owusu Note there. Now, Africa Policy Lens is warning that a quiet surge in domestic fuel prices could soon erode consumers' purchasing power and disrupt broader price stability, despite the country's recent headline inflation figures appearing statistically manageable. Senior fellow at the Africa Policy Lens at the think tank, Dr. Eric Boakye-Yadom, noted that while the recent rise in annual inflation to 3.7% last month may seem nominal to or minor on paper, the localized cost of living is noticeably climbing.
A second consecutive monthly rise in Ghana's annual inflation rate, triggered by commodity shocks from the Iran war, looks set to push cost of living metrics even higher in the months ahead, according to Dr. Boakye-Yadom.
Cost of fuel is actually eating up a consumer's income, and very soon we will start seeing it reflecting in price of goods and services, especially going into this particular month in June. We need to begin to put in measures to tackle the fuel price surge, and if we fail to tackle the fuel price surge, it will translate into other areas, and price of goods and services are likely to be high.
Ginger and mango led the top 10 items that collectively contributed 47.7% to overall inflation. Government statistician Dr. Hassan Idrisu told reporters prices increased 1.1% in the month, up from 1% in the previous month.
While prices continue to rise, the increase remains far lower than the 18.4% recorded in May last year. This tells us that in spite of the slight increase in May 2026, Ghana's inflation situation has improved significantly over the past year.
Dr. Boache Yadom also highlighted deep regional disparities that remain masked by national averages.
One thing that we also need to be mindful is that some regions are still reporting double-digit inflation. For example, in the Upper is recording a figure around 10%. I think we need to be very mindful and put in a targeted policy, especially for those regions that we know that they are largely farmers, and try to be able to cushion their cost of living.
That was a report on Ghana's inflation edging up to 3.7% in May 2026 for second straight monthly rise, but remains far lower than last year. Meanwhile, Finance Minister Dr. Atto has projected that Ghana's inflation is unlikely to exceed 5% by the end of 2026, even as escalating tensions in the Middle East threaten global supply chains and drive up petroleum and fertilizer costs. The comments come after a minor uptick in headline inflation to 3.7% in May. However, Dr. Forsing stated that Ghana is well positioned to absorb these external shocks due to a lack of petroleum subsidies, significant reserve buffers, and rising export earnings from elevated global gold and cocoa prices, while the Bank of Ghana has paused interest rate cuts at 14% to guard against these renewed risks. The government remains confident that recent macroeconomic gains will prevent a return to a double-digit cost of living crisis. To some other stories this afternoon, the Ghana Chamber of Mines has strongly condemned recent xenophobic attacks targeting Ghanaian workers in South Africa, joining a growing chorus of continental voices demanding immediate state intervention. Chief Executive Officer of the Chamber, Engineer Dr. Kenneth Achebe, expressed deep concern over the safety of export trade workers and urged the South African government to decisively clamp down on the violence. The industry body emphasized that Pretoria must uphold its global obligations and deploy adequate security measures to safeguard all residents irrespective of their nationality.
The Ghana Chamber of Mining condemns strongly the recent xenophobic attacks against Ghanaians and other foreign nationals in South Africa. Such acts are unacceptable and contrary to the values of dignity, inclusion, and cooperation. We call on all leaders to condemn these actions and urge the South African authorities to ensure the safety and protection of all residents and visitors. At the same time, we acknowledge and value the strong and enduring diplomatic and economic relationship between Ghana and South Africa, as confirmed by His Excellency the President recently in the UK. Secondly, regarding recent discussions on mining leases, the Honourable Minister for Lands and Natural Resources has assured stakeholders that mining lease matters will be addressed on a case-by-case basis in accordance with the laws of Ghana.
You heard the Chief Executive Officer of the Chamber of Mines, Engineer Dr. Kenneth Achebe there. That'll be all for Business Daily on 3FM 92.7. For more business news, please log on to our website, 3news.com. My name is Noble Crosby, and have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.